Good morning, Winfrey fam. I'm back. Just want to give a special shout out to our amazing youth ministry interns this summer, Abby Rutledge and Nathan Tuck. They did a phenomenal job. I was trying to keep up with them as best I could, but also just allowing them to do what God had called them to do. And so thank you both. You didn't burn down the building or anything like that. However, the bunker did flood like the weekend before I got back. So we'll take it though. No damage done. So wanted to share with you Pastor Josh, our new young adult pastor, did an amazing job talking about the story of Jesus walking on water, which can be found in Matthew 14. And the crazy part is, last week, August 7th, which was my last Sunday off, Megan and I went and visited Passion Community Church right up the road in Powhatan, and their senior pastor, Pastor Brian, lead pastor or whatever, actually did the same exact scripture passage, and he did his videotape from a boat, so he gets a little bit more credit for the visual aspect of that, but Josh did an amazing job with that. So if you hadn't had a chance to listen to that message yet, please go back and watch it from yesterday, either the contemporary or the traditional. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, and then kind of share a personal story with you from part of my sabbatical that kind of goes along with that. So Jesus walking on water, the disciples are scared, right? And then Peter calls to Jesus and says, "If it's really you, tell me to come to you." And Jesus says, "Come." So he starts walking on water, but eventually Peter gets scared and starts to sink, and then reaches out to God and says, "Help me, God," and everything. And so a couple of things to take from that. The first is God has got us, right? Like Jesus had Peter the whole time. But there are times in our lives where we look away, or we miss the mark, and we start to think about our own insecurities or different things like that. And that causes us to have anxiety, have stress, and then causes us to kind of wonder, where is God in that? And then we start to pull the reins back, and instead of allowing God to lead, we then take it upon ourselves and be like, no, I got this. I got to figure this out. So before my sabbatical even started, Megan and I had planned this 2-week trip out to the West. I've never been that far west. The furthest west I've ever been was probably Chicago, and we were going all the way through the Badlands to Mount Rushmore area, and it was beautiful, and it was a 2-week trip, and it was absolutely amazing. But there were some things that happened before that kind of caused myself and Megan to stress and have some anxiety and kind of be like, all right, what is going on here? So we have an older truck that we pull our camper with, and it's a 1997. And it did the job for a few like local trips around Virginia and stuff like that. But to make it that far was going to be a big task. Not to mention we took Sassy with us, and so we decided, all right, it's time for me to just buy a new truck. So even before my sabbatical started, I was doing research, what kind of truck do I want, and looking at all these different models. Needed something big enough and large enough to tow our camper and not to be like maxed out, like needed even more than that sort of thing. So did some research even before I started my sabbatical. Like I was, test drove a couple during my sabbatical. In the very beginning, I test drove a couple more, found one at a dealership that I really liked, and dealerships, are usually pretty trustworthy. And so moved forward with that one, purchased it, brought it by Winfrey, showed the staff, and as I'm driving it home, I kid you not, the tire pressure monitor fault light comes on. And so the car starts blinking and making noises, and I'm like, all right, well, they did put 2 brand new tires on it, so maybe the tire pressure is just a little bit too high for it, whatever the case may be. Call the dealership. They said, yeah, bring it by in a couple of days, and we'll take a look at it. Well, it was our first camping trip with the new camper, in the new truck, so we drove down Memorial Day weekend to North Carolina to see my family and to camp. And so as we're driving down, sure enough, that tire pressure monitor fault light goes on sporadically, And when it did, I noticed, and Megan and I both noticed, all of a sudden the air conditioner would shut off. And when you're driving around town, you don't really pay attention to that because you're only in the car for a few minutes. But when you're in the car for 3 hours and the air conditioner shuts off, that's a problem. And so I also noticed that a couple other lights came on with the tire pressure monitor fault light. It wasn't just that light that came on. So it sporadically came on and off during our trip. And on the way back from a 3-hour and 15-minute trip, we did not have air conditioning for 3 hours and 10 minutes of that trip. Happy wife, happy life. And my wife was not happy. So it's only a couple of weeks before we're about to take this big trip. And so I take it into the dealership, and they're not a Ford dealership, so they're trying to figure it out as best they can. But not to mention, everything is super busy right now. And so now it's like, all right, what is the game plan? Hopefully they have it done before we leave. And so that way we can take this new truck, new to us truck that we were specifically purchased for this big trip and then to have in the future. But having it for this trip was a big deal because, trying to rent a truck for that long with unlimited mileage when we know that it's going to be a lot of miles on it was going to be a lot of money. And therefore I was like, well, I'd rather put that money towards a down payment on another truck than put that money towards something. And so the dealership was really cool. Like 2 days before we're about to leave, they still haven't been able to figure out the problem. They're going to send it off to a special company, but that special company can't deal with it until later on. And so they made things right by saying, okay, well, we can't do a rental for you because it's going to be in our name. So you have a day to find a rental truck and we will reimburse you for it. So it's like, great. Now we're back to square one with trying to find a rental truck that will let us borrow a truck for 2 weeks and then still have, unlimited mileage and stuff like that. So thankfully I have a really good relationship with Automax where we get all of our vans from down on Broad Street. And I called him up and he could tell he really wanted to help us out. And so I got to borrow his daily driver through the company. That thing was a gas hog though. Like we literally went on the 2-week trip when prices were like sky high for gas, and this truck did not get very good gas mileage towing a camper. So all that to say, like even all the time and preparation that we did trying to plan for this trip, like things happen out of our control, and things happen in our life all the time that are out of our control. And so I just wanted to say, even though it wasn't the way that we originally planned the trip to go, in the long run, it all worked out. And we actually saved almost 4,000 miles on my new truck in the process of doing that. And so, yeah, it would have been nice to have our truck and, not have to go through the stress and the anxiety of everything last minute trying to figure it out. But God was faithful through all those things to provide a way for us to still manage that trip and do it in a successful way. And so sometimes in our life, we get, bogged down with the anxiety and stress of things not going the exact way that we wanted them to, when in fact, if we look back later, hopefully the way that God planned was actually a blessing and worked out better than we could have ever even imagined. And so I just want you to think about that. And I know I'm going long today, sorry. I just wanted to share that story with y'all. And I want you to think about what in your life is going on and where do you need to say, God, I'm not sure why this is happening, but I know you are in control and I'm going to have faith in you because time and time you have delivered me. So just be thinking about that and reflect on that today and this week. Y'all have a great week and just remain faithful to him. Take care.